Okay, we have 2 minutes left, so but 2 minutes more, but we will start at this moment. Okay. The next is Mr. Ashok Roy, and he will talk about Japanese outbound M&A. He also frequently came to this program to teach and make a presentation. And you have the one page is his profile, and he is currently the he changed Daiwa.
Yep.
Okay, what is the exact name?
Daiwa Quantum Capital.
Daiwa Quantum Capital, and he is doing his own business. At the same time, he came to business school to teach business quite often, and we will have the another kind of the course next semester. And today he talked about the Japanese outbound M&A for our enlightenment. Okay.
It's not as
Okay.
it's not as serious as Vikash's topic. So, but it's there's a lot of money here. So I'm sure everybody's interested. Just to give you a background, I spent 15 years, almost 15 years in New York, and a lot of it was mergers and acquisition, both at investment bank as well as for my own company. We built a company, a publicly listed company together, three of us. We built it up to about 180 million in revenue, half through acquisitions, half through organic growth. This was an IT services business. So we kind of, I have first-hand experience in failure as well as success. So it's M&A has been I've been in M&A for almost, I would say, 15, 20 years. And Japan right now is a very interesting situation. It's okay? Okay. Japan has about $25 trillion of household wealth. 25 trillion, 2500 yen, right? So, something like that. So people count it differently, including real estate, not real estate. So let's call it 2500 yen, right? Of the 2500 yen, let's call it 90%, or even 2000 yen, right, is going to stay in Japan, either in Kokusai, Japanese government bond, or Mitsubishi stock, or so on. But maybe 25%, who knows, 25%, 20%, maybe senchoing is going to be invested in higher yielding assets outside of Japan over the next 5 years. That is almost $1 trillion. So whether it's companies acquiring natural resources assets, or companies acquiring businesses, or financial companies making investment in funds, across the board, it's a huge number. It's, for example, Tokyo's economy, just Tokyo and Yokohama's economy, is bigger than India's economy. So this country has huge financial muscle, of course, totally unused, somewhat used, and they have to use it a lot more in the next 5 years. So some interesting things will happen. This is just a quick summary. Nothing that, well, most of the stuff I'm sure everybody knows. Why Japanese companies are doing M&A in a vigorous manner. One is yen is strong, easy to understand. But it's not just yen is strong, it's also bad economic times everywhere. So the valuations are also low. So it's a double whammy, double good whammy. Okay. Then companies in Japan, again, everybody knows there is pressure on top line. revenue is declining, cost is actually not declining, so profits are shrinking further. So if a company can acquire at least 20% of another company in any other geography, they are allowed by Japanese law to consolidate the profits. So if you have to show your shareholders more profit, you take your balance sheet money. Sometimes you can borrow cheaper too from Japanese banks, buy a company overseas that is more profitable, and show the profits on your books. That is a big game with all the trading companies in Japan. Everybody's playing that game. I'll give you some examples. And better intermediation, this is actually not very well known, but it is one of the reasons why Japanese companies have started doing more M&A. See, Japan is a non-transparent market, both inward and outward. People don't speak that much English. Culture is different. Yes, there is Toyota and Sony, but there are lots of small companies where CEOs don't speak English. Forget Chinese, right? So therefore, although they had money, they wanted to do something, but they really couldn't go out because they couldn't understand, they couldn't communicate with the seller. But now there are intermediaries in Japan, and Japanese investment banks who have partnered with other people outside can provide better information, much better information to buyers, potential buyers in Japan. So as a result, foreign banks actually own a larger share of Japanese M&A market. And Nomura is the leader still, but the foreign banks have a pretty large share. The last part is fear of obsolescence, which means you may be doing great business today, but you don't have to go that far. You can just look at Yahoo. Yahoo could almost be obsolete. In 10 years, it was the coolest, best thing, poster child of Silicon Valley. All of a sudden, it's a dog. But some companies have that paranoia, and that paranoia drives them to really think through strategically and make some very impressive decisions. Fujifilm is such a company. Fujifilm completely transformed. Kodak did not, and Kodak just filed for bankruptcy, right? So I'll talk about it a little bit. So I think, but what I am seeing right now is, it says at the top end, jED, jED. I just founded that company because there were so many things coming at my plate. I said, okay, let me form a company that can actually formally advise. jED stands for Japan's Edge. Japan's Edge, which basically means, from my point of view, Nihon no chie to shisan Asia. And I think that's it's going to be a big theme. Japanese knowledge capital and financing into Asia, that's going to be a big theme over the next 5 years, especially Asia. The important part here is Toyotas and Sonys and Panasonics, they have gone out, done stuff. They know it. They have they have Mitsubishi. This machine is there. But a small $1 billion, not small, that small, but $1 billion chemicals company sitting in Osaka. Now it's competing with Chinese, and it's like margin is getting squeezed every single day. It needs to get into a different chemical space, move up the value chain, acquire a factory closer to the source of the raw material. I can give you examples, right? How does it do it? It never even went outside of Japan. It has always been trading with Mitsui, and Mitsui has been doing everything for it. So those are new situations. These are not small companies. These are reasonable sized companies. Those are lots and lots of those situations are in Japan now, and companies are companies are nervous, especially mid-sized companies, because their umbilical cord that was attached to a large company, some oyagaisha, no, it's not just oyagaisha. Some big company is looking at some shitauke gaisha. Those cords are all detached now, because the big company has to survive on its own. So it could take Chinese supplier, it could take any supplier. So it's very interesting time, at least from my perspective. Um, the headline says it all: sumo size appetite for acquisitions. So as you can see, the amount of capital being invested by Japanese in overseas market has gone up. But here is something very interesting, and this is a long-term phenomenon. Surplus in income, right? Income meaning whatever you have invested outside, right? When foreign direct investment, security investment, and so on, is actually surpassing trade surplus, which means you made money before, and whatever you invested, you're making more money from there than whatever you can actually make, produce, and sell, right, to outside, which is a very dangerous phenomenon, right? And so I think for the first time in 30 years, 35 years, Japan will have a trade deficit. At some point, Japan will have a trade deficit. I mean, I don't need to predict it. I'm sure anybody can predict it, given the yen status and so on. But that's a different challenge, and I'll talk about it a little bit. 60 trillion cash and corporate balance sheet. It's $60 trillion. It's not a joke, right? It's very interesting thing going on in Japan is companies are no longer behaving as Japanese. Let me give you an example. Take any of the trading companies, Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, Marubeni, anybody, Itochu, Sojitsu, anybody, right? Rough numbers. All of them, roughly speaking, have about 100 billion in revenue, gross revenue. 100 billion, 120 billion, whatever the number is, right? Roughly, all of them have 3 to 7% net revenue, which means their actual revenue is about, let's call it between $5 to $10 billion, right? Okay, are these Japanese companies? A lot of their asset base is outside of Japan. Mitsubishi owns mines in Chile. Marubeni owns about 20,000 megawatt power, 2 gigawatt power projects around the world. Okay, so fine, their assets are not outside of Japan. Okay, but their employees are Japanese? No. All of these companies have about 20 to 30,000 employees. I'm giving rough numbers, okay? Under 10,000 employees are in Japan. So 5 to 10,000 employees are in Japan, 20,000 employees are outside. Are these Japanese companies? No. They have figured out, they operate as Japanese companies, headquarters is still here, decision making is still here, but they're still transforming themselves aggressively as asset owners. They're becoming asset owners. They cannot afford to become just trading companies because intermediary margin is shrinking. You can't just say, okay, I'll buy coal and sell coal. I got to own the coal mine. And that is transforming a lot of, so what I wanted to say, sorry, I got distracted. So is Marubeni or Mitsubishi, or take any of those companies, are they thinking on behalf of Japanese people, or are they thinking on behalf of themselves? If you look at their actions, they are very much thinking on behalf of themselves. Okay, so it's an interesting phenomenon. These large companies, like Nissan, for example, right? Nissan announced they will produce 1 million cars at home, right? It just says there. But their main procurement center is now in Shanghai. And they're also moving their luxury car section, overseas PR and everything. I guess you can argue Nissan because Nissan's CEO is a foreigner anyway, right? So in case of Nissan, but a lot of companies are trying to look out for themselves, not necessarily just for Japan as a country. So I have some examples here, right? And just give me 1 minute. So I just took last 3 months and said, okay, let's look at the deals that have happened in last 3 months. I just put some of these deals. These deals are all for very different reasons and quite sophisticated. For example, let's take the first deal. Sumitomo buys RBS aircraft leasing unit for 550 billion Japanese yen. What's the deal here? In aircraft leasing business, size matters. Sumitomo had 90 jets. They buy 100 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 jets. They They wanted to become bigger. So because if in leasing business, if you're bigger, you have the scale advantage. RBS was under pressure to sell assets. So distressed seller, Sumitomo can become bigger. This is a scale deal. It's got nothing to do with Japan. Simple scale deal, and Sumitomo expanding its business. Nagase buys US adhesive material for Japanese in $1 billion. It's a tiny deal, $10 million deal. But this is extremely, extremely strategic niche, totally fit with their existing business, can use their channels, and Nagase can use its own channel to sell this US company's products, which are high value added. So in other words, what I'm trying to, so this is extremely strategic deal from a product perspective. Recruit acquires Advantage Resources. Interesting deal. Recruit is in recruiting business. They wanted to expand into Europe and Asia. They picked up a company from Cerberus Capital. It's got nothing to do with Japan. They just wanted to expand geographically, have higher revenue base. And it kind of made sense because the company had 1.4 billion in revenue, 400 million price, nice, good time, good price, so they just picked it up. Fujifilm, again, as I said, Fujifilm has completely transformed itself, continues to acquire. Fujifilm had 2/3 of its profits coming from photo business, film business in 2000. Film business has dropped 25% every year since 2000. 2010, they have 3 billion revenue just from medical business, and they want to take it to 12 billion by 2018. I mean, that is a solid company. It's an impressive company. Let's look at next deal, Mitsui. This is very interesting deal. Neither Mitsui nor Malaysian fund actually bought the hospital chain. They never actually bought it. They have bought a company or created a company called Integrated Healthcare. Integrated Healthcare is one of the largest hospital chains in Malaysia and Singapore, has operations in India through investments. So Fuji and this Malaysian fund called Khajana, they decided to swap some shares with a Turkish company, basically manage their hospital business as investors and continue to expand. That is sophistication to me. This is acquisition, but this is very sophisticated acquisitions because you're not just a business owner who is buying other business. You're an investor who is invested in one business, but you are making that business expand just as an investor. So very interesting transactions happening in Japan, and the speed has gone up. Speed has gone up dramatically in last 1 year or 1.5 years, even after the Euro crisis. Mitsubishi is actually the simplest deal. Mitsubishi makes 40% of its profits from coking coal in Australia. 40% of the profits of this company comes from coking coal in Australia. The deal they did long time ago. So they want to continue to do more deals that's going to stack up profits for next 10 years. So they just went and bought some Chilean mine, 420 billion yen, fine, done. Nothing, I mean, it's not a complex deal. It's just a natural resources deal. Takeda is, I mean, Professor Aniga would know this more about this, but as I understand, it's just strategic expansion, product portfolio expansion, and emerging market expansion. The point I'm making here is Japanese companies have become really sophisticated. Not all of them, but some of them have become really sophisticated. The small companies to large companies have understood exactly what they want. Somebody wants assets. Somebody wants intellectual capital. Somebody wants just for investment purposes, acquisitions for investment purposes, and everybody has a different agenda, and they become very sophisticated. Several issues I see as a practitioner as a banker as well as an operator of business. One is, companies are doing okay, will do okay, some companies will do okay, but doesn't necessarily mean people. Because this M&A, outbound M&A, which has picked up dramatically, is not necessarily going to create jobs in Japan. And industrial base in Japan, as long as yen continues to be strong, will hollow out. There is no two ways about it. And that's going to create some interesting socioeconomic challenges in Japan. I don't have a good solution. I don't have a good answer. I'm just making an observation here. So that was the first part of my sort of data-driven and presentation, what's going on. Second part is more qualitative and more soft stuff. Lot of times business integration is not required in acquisitions, especially if you acquire natural resources based business. It's just an acquisition, asset operates outside, that's fine. But if you're acquiring a business that is, let's look at just at the bottom, right? Natural resources, it's low strategic value, mostly financial value, that's fine. But if you're acquiring a services company, right, where people have to talk to people and people are the assets, and you really want to integrate business model, have Japanese learn better practices from outside, outsiders learn better practices, the European operation learns better practices from the Japanese, and so on. In that case, the integration risks are much higher. And strategic value is high, but the integration risks are much higher. And what I have seen anecdotally is larger firms have become very proactive. They used to be reactive. Reactive means they were just like, if somebody shows them something, they will say, yeah, it looks good. But now larger firms are actually looking for things. They know exactly what they want. Mid-sized firms have all of a sudden woken up. They're like, we don't know what to do. We have a revenue problem. We have a cost problem. We need to do something, but we have no idea what to do. So they are the most nervous right now. Again and again, I have seen lost in translation issues. For lack of a better way to describe the movie, Lost in Translation, meaning communication and cultural differences have led to breakdown in deals and misunderstanding and lots of things. And third point, I think everybody would agree, Japan has a lot of organizational power, a lot of financial muscle on the balance sheet, but very weak on leadership, even the best of the companies. Because some of these things have to be led by one or two people. It can't be led by like a team. M&A is not M&A. Some of the M&A strategies is not led by like a 10-people team. I mean, 10-people team can execute it, but the CEO needs to set the direction and set the strategy. And sometimes it hasn't happened. And I'm not sure Japan will ever completely adopt meritocracy, which means a 35-year-old can be the CEO, not necessarily the Bucho progression. And but because I think there are social issues around it as well, and cultural issues are around as well. But I hope it happens at some point. This is an interesting case that is happening right now. Okay, it's a very serious case, and nobody knows all the facts. That's why I just have quote from the Wall Street Journal. So Nomura acquired Lehman, right? Famously in Lehman's European and Asian operations. What Nomura did at that time, they said, okay, we want to transform. We want to become Goldman. Okay, we acquired Lehman. Let's put Lehman boys in charge, at least in some charge. So they took two guys, J.C. Patel and Tarun Jatwani. I happen to know both of them, and they put them on. J.C. became the deputy president. Last year he became the deputy president, but before that he went to their executive board and so on. And this, they were doing okay, but 2010 was a wash in some sense for financial firms as well, and they had internal clash. From reports I have known, people that I've talked to, and newspaper reports. And as recently as last week, these two guys, and obviously a lot of the Lehman folks, would leave the firm. And Nomura's share price has gone down by some 80% or something like that. Not just necessarily because of that, because of a variety of things. So in some sense, Nomura made a bold decision. In services firms, integration is very critical. Assimilating intellectual capital is very critical. They made the right decisions, at least on the surface, but somehow something went wrong. Maybe it's a symptomatic of times, or maybe Nomura did something wrong. I'm not sure what happened, because it's still unfolding, the events, right? The people are getting to know what exactly happened. But this is something that U.S. companies, I would say U.S. and European companies, have done a remarkably a good job in tapping into human capital and assimilating into your own firm. And I don't think Japanese have done that yet. Maybe in some few circumstances they have done it, but I don't know of any example where a services company, a high-end services company, to me this is a services business, investment banking business, acquiring another services business and have really assimilated and transformed itself. So time will tell how it works. I mean, we have some ideas as advisors and as investors, but time will tell how that works. That was a short presentation, but hopefully it was useful.
First, I should mention jED first as your managing partner. So jED is a Japan Edge. And you founded the company here in Tokyo?
Yes, it's in Tokyo, Hong Kong, and in Mumbai.
Oh, so the meaning of Japan Edge is to bring the talent or capital to...
Yes, to Japanese knowledge capital and financing. Because Japan has two assets right now, really. One is intellectual assets, whether it's technology or process knowledge and so on. The other is money.
Okay.
It's got deep pockets, and Asia needs both of them badly.
Okay. So from the beginning, I should have mentioned jED.
No, not a problem.
Okay.
Okay.
And the Q&A session will begin. So any questions?
日本語で大丈夫ですからね。
Okay.
Thank you for this presentation. So my English is so poor. I couldn't listen some parts of your presentation. I'm sorry. So, so are you trying to say Japanese company have a strong on financial power but weak on leadership? Is it right?
Yes.
Right?
That's a very general statement. It's not true for every company. But generally speaking, Japanese companies have done well in the past, have accumulated cash on their balance sheet, but they've been very, very, very domestic or very, very operational oriented. And in the context of M&A, when you're going out and pitching yourself to a seller and buying a seller and making it work with your companies, it requires a different sort of leadership. And that leadership is not there. I mean, it partly comes with experience and partly cultural as well.
In leadership means in Asia or in the world, you mean?
No, what I mean is leadership within Japanese management.
We on the Japanese
island? Because Japanese company, I come to you, you're, let's say, Chinese company or Indonesian company. I come to you and say, hey, I'm a Japanese company, I'm a larger company, and I want to purchase you, maybe have 60% stake in your company, and here is what I bring to you, right? Here is what I bring to you, right? In the sense, this is my value to you, not just money. So to present that, to make that kind of bold offer to a seller, it requires a different sort of leadership, and that leadership is lacking in Japan, generally speaking. So, for example, I'll give you an exact example. You take a Japanese CEO to a potential buyer to a meeting, and it's a real actual case. Potential buyer to a meeting, and the buyer has told us that they have to get into this space. There is no choice. Okay, they have to get into the space, but in the meeting, when the seller and the transaction is structured as part payment upfront, part payment later, based on performance. So the buyer has to convince the seller that they have a great strategy to make this business bigger, and therefore they can pay them later. But it's a selling strategy, right? And the CEO did not do a good job. Although they badly wanted it, they were the largest bidder. But so the deal went to somewhere else.
Okay, thank you. And I have another question. So you mentioned about Mitsui or Sumitomo. It's about the bank, Mitsui Bank. You mean?
Yeah,
or
you're talking about SMFG.
yeah,
It's a bank. Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group.
Then I didn't know Mitsui got a hospital chain, so I am very surprised. Then Mitsui at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 line at Mitsui Malaysian founded by Turkish hospital chain. So I didn't know that. So then
it's actually a little bit misleading because as I explained, Mitsui is an investor in a company called Integrated Healthcare.
Just
Very large investor.
Money.
Large investor. So they made that company acquire the Turkish company. So this is almost portfolio investment management. So Mitsui is not in the business of running hospital chains.
Okay.
Mitsui is a large owner of a hospital chain, and they're making that company acquire another company. They're putting up the money too.
And how about the maker? For example,
Manufacturer.
brother machine.
Brother, yeah.
So yesterday or last week, I watched a TV program about the brother.
Yeah.
And they have a success.
Yeah.
So, they reported like this. They have a success in the world.
Right.
So always they try to improve. So what do you think about brother?
Brother is good, but there is a lot of competitors to Brother. Brother has a printing business, right? And they used to have the fax business, and there are lots of little other businesses.
Printer business.
Right. But it's a very competitive, high, margin is getting squeezed. I'm not sure what their exact strategy is, but Brother is a company that needs to figure out how to move up to a value-added product, higher margin product. I don't know their exact strategy, but those are good. Those are the companies that are thinking very hard right now what to do.
So I'd like to know the reputation, the differences between Japan and in the world. So in Japan, for example, the reporter evaluated and brother machine company, but then in the world, this evaluation is true or not?
It's not always true. Sometimes, you mean if a Japanese reporter evaluates a Japanese company, is that evaluation same as an evaluation of Brother in the US? Is that the question?
Yes.
Is Brother considered as good a company in the US? That's a question. In some cases, it's true in the sense Toyota is considered best in the Japan. Toyota is considered one of the best in the US, but not in every case, because for example, in the US, HP has a much bigger market, but HP is not. I don't think HP is that. Hewlett Packard. HP is the largest computer maker in the world. Hewlett
Packard.
Yes. So, but HP is not big in Japan. Brother is pretty big in Japan. So it's hard to tell, but product quality of Brother is not bad at all. It's all about price point. Everything is becoming price point, value for money. So I'm not sure if Brother is, I will suspect Brother doesn't manufacture anything in Japan anymore, maybe a little bit. A lot of Brothers manufacturing, I would suspect, would have moved out to China or some other place.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem.
Any other questions?
So, in your opinion, Fujifilm is a success case, and Kodak is a case of failure?
In one word, yes.
Then why is it that some companies behave like Fuji and some companies fails, just like Kodak? What's the reason behind that?
3 reasons. One is leadership, strategy. One is luck, right? Kodak also tried to transform, but they bet on the wrong products. They bet on Kodak camera. They bet on some other stuff that other people were much better at doing it. And third is macro environment. You know, the Kodak had a lot of debt, a lot of balance sheet issues, and so on. So, but overwhelmingly, if you look at a long term, I would say 50% is the leadership, and willingness to take risk. Fuji took a lot of risk. I mean, for that matter, Fuji in all kinds of businesses. Fujifilm, I believe, if I'm not wrong, if my memory serves me right, Fujifilm has also entered into generic drugs business in Japan. They've partnered with Ranbaxy in India, or Ranbaxy, I believe so. Not Ranbaxy. They partnered with somebody I forgot. Yeah. So Fuji is an interesting case. They're very different from the others.
Not sure on this subject. I don't understand at all why some companies get the information of companies in foreign countries so well and so correctly. How can they get the information from all over the world?
M&A business, especially M&A business, is very people-to-people business. Largest deals, best deals get done over a handshake in a dinner meeting or over a drink. And it's the network. The company that I work for, Daiwa Quantum Capital, the chairman of the firm is a gentleman called Idei, who was the chairman and CEO of Sony. He has done a lot of deals, you know. He's a very well networked guy. Some have been successful and some have not been successful. But he is an amazing networker. And so is, for example, the people that I've seen personally, Ninami-san at Lawson. He's an amazing networker. Uniqlo. He's also an amazing networker. So a lot of these CEOs that have developed this network, and they understand, if I can say this in Japanese, good CEOs don't care about kuki o yomu, but they care about kaze o yomu, especially smart CEOs. And I don't have a recipe or answer for you. How do people get information? It's most of critical information get transferred or get passed on from people to people. It's not database information. I mean, you can get a lot of information from database, but deals don't happen from database.
Okay.
Then that leads me to another question, which is, if some CEOs are so good at networking, why is it that, as you said, that those people are not good at leadership, as you said?
I didn't say that. But actually, I didn't say that. I mean, some CEOs are good at both. Ninami-san is a good example. There are some CEOs who are pretty good at networking as well as leadership. Yes. Yeah.
How about the overall evaluation of the Japanese professional corporate leaders? you mentioned the 50% success of the 50% lies in the leadership. And I'm wondering what kind of the education is required. And today we have the program here, but most of the undergraduate and master student were absent because of the job searching. And especially the college students around this time is tied up with the job searching process more than half a year or 1 year. So they do not have enough time to study, or they do not have enough opportunity to learn something except for job searching process. So I'm just curious what kind of the education, especially the college level or graduate level, is required to have to establish a good leadership in talent.
I don't know if leadership could ever be completely taught, because at some point it's kind of innate. It's in it's in there. But if it can be taught, the first thing I think we should encourage everybody in any college, any school, is to experiment, take more risks, do something that you can do and others can't do. And if we can force that upon some, in general, if we can force that, because I lived in the U.S. and I'm an American, although I grew up in India. You know, we Americans in general, I don't know what it is now. I haven't been there for 4 years. Do take risk, do try out things that they were told they can't do, and out of chaos comes new ideas. Some ideas work, some ideas don't. But we just need to do it more in Japan, and we just need to challenge the convention. And I think that is the first step towards leadership, which is people follow you when they believe you can do something, you can lead them to something that they can't do by themselves. And I don't know, I'm still thinking about it. How do you inspire people to do that? I'm still thinking about it.
Okay. Another question is like this. 9 months ago, directly after the quake, we had a personal conversation regarding to the Tohoku area, the fishery industry, fishing industry, and food processing of based on the fishing industry. How to re-establish those industries. Those companies are small in size. The number of the people had declined significantly after the quake. And also, there are a lot of the small size business in Tohoku area. For example, traditional furniture or traditional textile or some kind of the processing manufacturing corporations. So you personally made efforts to re-establish those kind of the industry and the corporations. But how is it related to this big wind or stream or the kaze in terms of M&A or some kind of global finance? So that's the questions.
For Tohoku, as you remember, and I'm sure we talked about it, the big challenges for greedy corporations are Tohoku has the lowest per capita income in Japan and lowest, I'm saying lowest, one of the lowest, let's call it. It's half of Tokyo. Education level is also very low. And so corporations had little incentive to go there and establish something. The only way it works is you give them tax incentive, and you create something that takes advantage of local assets, which is fisheries. Fisheries, of course, there's abundant fish there. It has, I think it has happened in a smaller scale, but Tokyo's governor, as you know, who I know reasonably well, He tried to bring 3 or 4 governors for a meeting here, and there were some initial interest, but it didn't translate into any concrete things. I think they did something in Sendai, but it didn't really translate into something major in Tohoku, and partly because people could not agree to regulatory reforms, because they were still talking about it. And I'm sure you've heard about IPP. Tokyo is trying to do IPP, and so they're talking about it, but there's still a lot of things that need to be cleared for people to step in, for private money to step in.
So to establish the broad and big picture, it's better to focus on the tax issue or some kind of regulatory issue first.
Yes, absolutely. Because if you want to attract private capital, which is greedy, which means it has to make money,
Yes.
It can only make money from 2 places, which is using the naturally advantageous resources in that region, and
Okay.
and and somewhere some money savings.
Okay, so in terms of the Japan age, the Tohoku area small size business, they don't have enough capital or financial availability, but they have some kind of the skill or some kind of the talent or some kind of design. So have you found any edge in those corporations, the small size business?
No, personally, no, except for the fishing business, which was interesting.
Okay.
There was interest in Sendai area businesses to take over. Private companies will invest in infrastructure businesses like Gesui, all that stuff. But I mean, I have to be honest. I think Tohoku is not the most attractive area for large businesses unless there is some regulatory reform.
Okay.
That's just the sad part of the story. I mean, I can give you a colorful explanation, but that's reality.
Okay, I understand. Any additional comments or questions? Okay. No. Okay. Thank you very much again. And maybe next time we will invite him again to talk about another financial related issue. And as I mentioned already, at the next semester, starting from April, he instructs a class at the Mita campus, and regarding to the Japan and emerging market business, and I will assist him also. So if anyone is interested in that kind of the program, so we welcome you to come to the course. Okay. Thank you very much. So 5 minutes off.